So welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm really excited to talk about this. This is the second part of our grant writing series. We're kind of in the grant writing season right now. I know Beth is here from SOS and SOS has some more options for grant writing workshops throughout the month. If you're saying, what is SOS? Don't worry about it. This is grant writing. If you know what SOS is, great. If you don't, that's okay too. They are a funder, Secretary of State. So if you're confused about that, but our trainings are open to everyone, which is why you might be here. So the first part, we talked about data, how to find it and where it is. And now we are going to talk about what we do with it. So we will get started. This is our plan for today. We're going to do a quick review and quick in just it's one slide about how to review finding data. So if you are confused and I keep talking about finding data and you don't know where, that happened in the first training. So I'm going to share that with you. I'm going to reshare all of the slides from the first and today's training afterwards, and you'll have the recording. So don't stress, just let it wash over you if you feel like I say something that you don't know what we're talking about. And we have a pretty nice sized group today, so it'll be hard for us to communicate, just with our voices. So let's use the chat, and then if we have any questions afterwards, I'm here to help. So we're gonna talk about using data and narratives. That's the whole thing we're going to talk about today. So for those of you that were not here last time, this is a repeat slide, but I just wanted to make sure. So everything will be shared out afterwards. The recording, as you heard, is happening. That will be available afterwards as well. And we just want to acknowledge, if you saw like our most recent report from Literacy Works, grant writing is not without problems. It is a problematic situation. So Literacy Works and myself acknowledge that, and we're not really talking about that today. Today we're talking about the fact that there are grants, whether they're good or bad, and we want to get them. So what do we do to get them? But if you ever want to talk about alternatives to grant funding, we can talk about that. But today we're looking for grants. So I'd love to start, if you haven't already. A lot of you have already introduced yourself. So if you'd like to introduce yourself, please do in the chat. If you already did, I also want to know, what is your data and narrative skills? So when you think about giving data and putting it into a story, how do you feel if someone told you to do that? 1 would be, I would melt down, I have no idea. Or 5 would be like, I do that all the time, no problem. So you can introduce yourself in the chat, or just give me a number. So what are your, if I said, put this data into a narrative, what do you feel? 3 and 4, 2 and 3, 3.5, 3, 3, 3, 4, 4. Great. 1. Okay, great. No 5s, so we can still go forward. Oh, there's a 5. Yeah. Oh, 2.5 out of 5. Okay. But whatever. We're all learning. This is great. Okay, so this is awesome. So we'll have some basic stuff, but I would also recommend, if you're in a 2 or a 1 range, coming to our next training at the end of the month. That's strictly persuasive writing. So we can talk more about like writing techniques. There's no websites involved. It's just like a writing class. So if you are kind of new to grant writing and just want a little bit of support with that kind of persuasive writing, that's what that'll be. So if you feel like you left and you have a lot of questions, that might be it. But hopefully we get somewhere with this. So awesome. So finding data. We talked about this last time. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that's okay. This is the website that we were finding our data on. And here is a link to the recording that we did. So that's me going through all of them. And remember, the slides also include video tutorials and step-by-steps for all of these things, searching by state, city, county, and tract. If you forgot your tract numbers, that's all there. And remember that when you're starting to look for data, we wanted to emphasize that we want to look at tract numbers specifically, because that shows us our neighborhood data. And that's what the funders want. They want, tell me what's happening on your street. So if you have any questions about that or kind of practice this week, we can talk about it. But that's all I'm going to say about that. And I will refer you to our last training there. Okay, so last week we found a lot of data. We could find lots of numbers. We can find all kinds of statistics, and we didn't know what to do with them. We didn't talk about what to do with them. We just collected all the information. So maybe you have these great data points about your program or about English learners or people learning to read, and then you just kind of list it in your grant. So we're going to talk about the fact that data doesn't make a narrative. So having these statements doesn't make a grant proposal. You have to write the grant proposal and use those data points as evidence for your argument. So just saying the data point doesn't tell us anything. So you need to use it correctly, and you can use data in all kinds of ways. We've seen data being used in all kinds of ways. If you watch TV or read a newspaper, they're always using data to tell a story. It's never just a list of things. So because statistics can mean everything or nothing, so you can change them to mean everything. You can spin a statistic to say anything you want. So just it alone is like, I don't know what to think, and I'm left saying, so what? Who cares? I don't know what to do with this information. How does it affect me? How does it affect your work? I don't know anything yet. So we need to, the numbers that we find, the data that we find need to be connected to a story, because otherwise they won't make sense, but also it makes it more compelling. It makes the readers say, oh, I cannot wait to fund this program because I'm so excited about what I read. That's what we want from our grant proposals. So we have to have, and this is, we started doing this because the Secretary of State kind of mentioned this is an area where people struggle a little bit, where they just kind of list information about the people, the populations in their area, and don't really tell me, they don't answer, so what? And that's the question we're going to ask a million times today. And I'm going to say it a bunch of times and you're going to get annoyed. So what? That's what I'm always going to say. And as you're writing a grant, continuously ask yourself, so what? So we have 40% English learners in my neighborhood. So what? Oh, I have an ESL class. So what? My ESL class is helping all these students. So what? It's making a huge difference in the program. You can always ask yourself, so what? Because that's what the readers are going to be doing. That's what the grant readers are going to be like, so what? Who cares about your program? Tell me more. But your programs are incredible. So grant writing can be a huge barrier when we can't write about what we're doing, because we know you're doing good work. You just got to read it. So let's talk about these statistics. So I want to ask you, and I'd love for you to write in the chat, what does this mean? Tell me about these statistics. So 9% of pet owners have birthday parties for their pets. 26 of Chicagoans agree that snow is a lot to handle in winter, and you have a 1 in 5 billion chance of dying by being hit by space debris. So if these are just listed for you, what do you know about these topics? What do we learn about this from these points, from these data points? Did we learn anything? So what? Thank you, Mary Kate. Not much, Jessica. Yeah. So what? Who cares that people have pet birthdays? What am I going to do about that? But that's what happens. That's what it feels like when you just list the data you found in the census. The readers are like, so what? Lots of people need to learn how to learn English. Lots of people need to learn how to read. Why should I fund you? And it sounds rude, but that's what it is. It's everybody's just saying, so what? So constantly ask yourself that. And this is just a plug for you, and we'll talk about this on our next training, but always have somebody else read your piece. If you're the only one writing it, have anybody read it, preferably someone that doesn't know what you're talking about. So preferably a partner, a friend, a neighbor that doesn't know your organization in and out. So they can ask you, so what? You told me all this stuff, but I don't know what that means. That's a great person to ask, because that's who the readers are. Like, they know what adult education is, but they don't know about you specifically. So tell them. So yeah, so what? So narratives help us make sense, and they help us answer that question. So now we can add more information to that. So what about this? So this is just an example I created so that I could find a bunch of pictures of cats and hats. That's true. But I'm going to read this narrative now. So we at Hats for Cats believe that cats are cuter when they're wearing our hats. Our work hatting cats has been an incredible impact in our community, but the scarce funding in this field, we are limited by our capacity. In 2021, it was reported that 9% of pet owners have birthday parties for their pets, but a recent survey shows that in 2022, that number rose to 20%. This upward trend in pet birthday parties indicates that there will be a greater need for cat hats in the coming years. So now, is marketing for pets birthday party, but who knows? Yeah, who needs that? Who knows? So now, thinking about this story that I just told you, what is the argument of hats for cats? What do they want? What are they trying to get for this? What are they trying to do? What's their work? You can write in the chat if you have any ideas. What's the point of this proposal? Fund to increase capacity, community impact. Yes. They have identified a growing need. They want more funding to make more hats, higher demand for hats on cats. There is a demand for hats for cats, so they need funding. And I'm so happy that everyone got to say hats for cats a bunch of times today. Yeah, so it's very clear. I mean, we can go farther in this example, of course, this is a very short snippet of their full proposal, but we know what they want. They've mentioned it, and we're going to have to mention it again and again throughout. I'm sold too. I'm like, where do I sign up? I want to donate to these cats. So they told us what they want. How did they use the data? So remember when we had this statement, 9% of pet owners have a birthday party for their pets. So when we got to their proposal, how did they use it? What do you think? Let me see what your thoughts are on that question, and then I'll explain. They showed how demand has grown. Yeah. So if you have a really low statistic and you're like, I really need to show, I know the census data says that there's no people here that are immigrants, but I know there are. I'm working with them. How do I show this? So sometimes it's just finding 2 data points and seeing if you can see a trend. And that's when we talked about that 3-year and 5-year estimate in the American Community Survey. We talked about that last time, is you don't have to show, if 100% of people in your neighborhood speak English, but that's not true because you have a thriving program, you have to show how that is. And sometimes the data is not going to help you with that because it says, a really low percent of pet owners have birthday parties. So who's going to give me money for that? Well, if I look for more data, I see, oh, now it's almost doubled. People really, really want to buy these hats. So now I have a better argument. But you can make it say whatever you want. You could also have used this statistic to say, this is our work of stamping out birthday parties for pets. We think it's an abomination and we want it to stop. So our work shows that only 9% of people have birthday parties for pets. So our work is so important. It's down from whatever percentage, right? So you can spin the data however you want. If you're pro cat birthday, you can talk about trends going up. If you're anti cat birthday, talk about how small the statistic is. You can make it say whatever you want, but that's why narratives are really important. Because if you just put this number there, I'm like, so what? It's annoying that I'm going to keep saying it, but I will. So thinking, this is what we want with our proposal. We want to say, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? What do I want from the funders? And why should they give it to me? That's what we want to say all the time, over and over again. Because you are doing good work. You are doing really important work that needs to be funded. So that's that. Now you just need to tell people about it. And you need to make sure it's clear. So always ask yourself, and that's why you can start now. I mean, if we're talking about the Secretary of State grant, that's due in March for most of us. But if you're doing any grant, start early and start asking, going through every single, do I really answer the question? Am I really answering so what? Over and over again. So yeah, so a lot of people said they were sold on this. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of compelling. It's like, well, I mean, if I was investing in cat, clothing, this might be a good argument for me to think about that. So here are some more relevant examples for us, not quite cat-centric. So I want you to think about which one is more interesting. I'm going to read both of them for those of you that maybe are, and can't look at the screen right now. But the first one says, the need for our ESL program is great in our community. There are many people that speak languages other than English, and we know that our services will have a strong impact on their linguistic needs. So that's number one. Number two says, from 2011 to 2015, approximately 2.2% of Chicago residents reported being foreign-born. Additionally, 20.6% of people at least 5 years or older stated that Spanish was their first language, and 14.7% claimed that they did not speak English very well. These data suggest that an ESL program would be a welcomed addition to this community. So which one did you think is more interesting? Which one are you more likely, with just this short snippet in the chat? You can just write 1 or 2. What do you think? 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Yeah, tell me why 2. Oh, let's see, Mary Kate. Curious if the argument corresponds to the statistic. Why do we assume increase in parties? Yeah, I think that's a really great point. But Mary Kate, I think we get to explain that in another paragraph. No, that's good. But you're right. Yeah. But I think that's a really great point. Kate, if you're asking, so what that there's more birthday parties? I don't wear hats at birthday parties. So now you need to show, oh, but most people do wear hats at birthday parties, and so do cats. Something you have to find that information to make sure that has, but you said so what? So you just keep asking. 2 has more data. Yeah. And what else explains why we need a program? Yeah. So we have data now, and we have some explanation. So 2 is a little bit more interesting. So what about this one? So I'm going to read this one to us, our third one. According to 2017 data from the American Community Survey, 55.2% of Chicago residents reported being foreign-born, and 36% stated they speak a language other than English at home. Of that 36%, 41.7% claim to speak English less than very well. These data indicate that there is a need for ESL in this community. So now, do you change your mind? What do you think, 1, 2, or 3? Which one is the most interesting to you? Still 2, Jessica says. Now Rebecca says 3. I'd love to know why. Why we got 2 again. Okay, so tell me why 3 is all Chicago, not their specific community. Okay, I love that. I love that. 2 or 3. These are all great points. 3, because it demonstrates a need rather than something that would be a welcome addition. Okay. I think actually I like the stronger language of 3. Yes. So if you're gravitating towards 3 and you're like, I don't really know why, connects the mission with the problem and the need. Yeah. Okay. So there's lots of things that are happening in 3. And actually, some of the words that you're suggesting are also in 2. So there's a few other changes that happen in 3. 3 shows the direct need. And actually, why would we need to learn English is my next question, i.e., how would that help yeah, so what? So what? They don't speak English. Who cares? Right? So then you're going to show some information about why learning English will help people be able to read to their children, and then improves family structures or whatever you're working on. So the thing about 3 too is, we're going to talk about this, is they're citing their sources. So in 2, that's just numbers, but I might say, where did you get those numbers? I can make up whatever I want. I have it from 2011 to 2015, but it's 2023. So that's kind of old. That's kind of old data. And they also, definitely better their lives and livelihood for English. So these are just numbers out of context. I don't know where I got the numbers, and they're kind of old. And then when I look at 3, now I see American Community Survey. Now I know. So if somebody wanted to look up your data, they could, because now you know that I'm going to look in 2017, which is much more recent than 2011. So we're trying to find the most recent data. We're trying to cite our sources. We want to have a strong argument, and we want to answer, so what? So some of you already mentioned, we have to check the so what. So some of you mentioned it's Chicago only. The program will be there as an option if they want to learn the language. It'd be a great resource to have in the community. Yeah. And then we can like talk about why. So what? It's a great resource. Why? What are you going to do? People mentioned it's Chicago residents, right? So we need to get some more specific data. So what about Chicago? You work in, back of the yards. So all of Chicago doesn't matter to me. Or you're getting, especially if you're not in Chicago, using Chicago data is not even close, right? We're going to use Illinois data and then go to our city. But we're also going to cite our sources and make sure that we use the most up-to-date data that we can. So we want to start broad and get more specific. So we want to talk about, so in this example, we're starting with Chicago, for example. We might have started with Illinois and say, the standard, the average person in Illinois has this much education. In Chicago, it's this much. In my neighborhood, it's this much. And this is what I want to focus on. When we start from big to small, it really shows the comparison and also shows, wow, maybe Chicago has, 55% of Chicago are foreign born, but in your neighborhood, it's like 80%. So that's a stronger argument for your proposal because you're saying, yes, I know about half of Chicagoans report being foreign born, but in my neighborhood, it's a lot more. So my program is really needed in this area. So we can really we're going to just use the data however it makes our program look good because it's just numbers. And the census is great for that. But we also talked about there's also other places to get data. Pro Literacy has a lot of stuff. There's lots of data out there, but check, how old is it? Where did it come from? And how relevant is it to you, to your program? Just because the data is out there doesn't mean you have to use it. If it's not relevant, then don't just fill up the space. You want to say, this is what, you want to use to make the data work for you, whatever you want it to say. And just like the cat birthday, you can say everything you want about that 9%. In this argument, I think saying that 55% of Chicagoans are reported foreign born, I could spin it to say, we're pretty good. That's about half of people speak English. So I don't know if we need a program here. Could be. You can say whatever you want. So it's just a matter of your story. And that's the hardest part. So we want to be as specific as possible, but start big. And a lot of you already pointed that out. So you're already noticing. New data is best. So we talked about this last week, but when we looked at the example of number 2, 2011 to 2015 is too long ago to be writing in 2024, in the 2024 fiscal year, because the census data is updated. And that means you're either using old data or you haven't updated your proposal, which the readers will think, ooh, so you just copy and pasted your proposal from last year and you haven't updated the data. Interesting. So we all know that we don't start from scratch, but we do have to update the data. And especially a year after a census, which we had in 2020, we're going to have more data available, especially as we get a little farther away from that collection. So try to find the newest stuff you can. If you follow the steps from last week, you will be at the newest information. And then if you need older information, you can. And be sure to cite your sources. So this is an important part. And I'll bet you $10 that the readers are not searching for your sources as they read your proposal. I'm going to say 10 instead of 20. I don't know. I don't think they look these up. That doesn't matter though, because it gives this sense that you did the work, you know the research, you cited your sources, so you covered your bases. I found this data in a real place. I didn't make it up, and I put it in, and you can look for it. You can go look it up and see that I'm not lying. Whether they look it up or not doesn't really matter, but you're showing I'm confident in this proposal and I'm confident in these numbers because I did the work. We need to cite our sources and make sure, and there's lots of ways to cite. And if you're struggling with character limits or you're kind of running out of space, I can give you lots of examples of how to shorten those sites so you don't have to write like American Community Survey and take up all your space. but you want to make sure it's from a real place too. So some random blog that you found a statistic on, maybe not a great source, because who is that? The census is a great source. Pro literacy is a great source. Your library is a great source. These are real places that you can get. And if you're wondering about online sources and kind of struggling about that, we have a training on media literacy, and we can talk about that too, about how to find good sources. But you want to make sure you say where you got your data. So I'm going to give you we're going to practice now. So I'm going to give you an activity, and we're going to do it in 2 parts. So I want to kind of put all that together. So basically, we just need to practice we know how to write. We are great writers. We're already writing our story. We just need to combine our data and our narrative writing. So what I want to do is, for the first 7 minutes, I'm going to give you 7 minutes on your own to just sit down and write. You can do it on the computer. You can do it on Post-it, on your phone, whatever. I want you to choose one of the statements that I'm going to show you. And then you're going to add 2 or 3 sentences telling me a story about that statement. So it's the same statements we used before. I'll show you the example now. So all you're going to do is pick one of these: 9%, 26%, or space debris. And if this is too small, I'm going to put it in the chat. But we're going to pick one of those, and you're going to write 2 or 3 sentences, 1 or 2, whatever you need to make an argument. Make an argument just like the cat birthdays one. And I want you to think about so what, and ask yourself so what the whole time. Who cares? And there's going to be so what's, because we're not writing a full proposal. Yeah, of course you can. Leona, you can make up whatever you want. If you have statistic in your head you want to practice, do that. If you're just like, I don't even know where to start, you can use one of these examples. Write about whatever you'd like. I want you to take, we're going to do 7 minutes. When we come back, when I alert you after 7 minutes, I'm going to put you in pairs, and we're just going to swap. Read our proposals, and then give each other feedback. Think about sources, think about accuracy, and for this case, if you're using a fake statistic, make up a source. Think about the newest data, and think about so what. So welcome back, everybody. I know that was really fast. I know there wasn't enough time. I know. I think that's everybody. Great. Okay, so initial thoughts. How did that go? What do you think? How did it go to share a made-up story with maybe a potential stranger? Tell me how those session went for you. You can how about we use you can write in the chat, or if you'd like to use your voice, let's use the hand raising function. So I can make an order of this. So if you don't know what the hand raising thing is, that's okay. Just go ahead and write your answer in the chat or share with us. Any thoughts of how that went? It went well. I learned a lot from Tom. Yes, I know Tom and Beth, some of you got secret superstar helpers. I didn't mean to put Beth and Tom in rooms, but they were there. So good for you. It was good. We used the same data point. It was interesting to see the different routes we took. I love that. Easier said than done, but I feel like I hit the jackpot with my partner. Oh, I love that. Yes. Have you, did you get a lot of so what's? Were you able to recognize when you ask so what in someone else's proposal? Was that helpful to ask yourself that, kind of see what holes are in your story? Okay. So that is a very mini version of what you could do with your proposal. You could write this out, you could collect all your data, you can write out a narrative, and you could give it to a stranger, and you can have them read it and see what they think about it. If they're left being like, okay, I understand you do ABE tutoring, but like, I don't really get the people that you serve, or I don't really understand the mission of your organization, or you do classes or you do tutoring, I don't know. If they have those questions, the proposal readers are going to have those questions too. So think about the exact same thing we did today of on your own finding data, trying your best to put it in a narrative and then having somebody read it. And Mary Kate says it's not as much as holes, but opportunities to expand and reimagine. Yeah, and you can always ask, so what? Even when it's perfect at the end, there's always something you can add and make it a little clearer, a little bit more explicit. We don't need to be coy about our work. It's important, period. And while some some societal norms say it's not true, we know it's true, and so we want we could start with that assumption, and then we can really make it a strong argument. So this was just a small example. So if you met your partner and you love them, exchange email addresses right now in the chat. Try to connect with your learner, or if your learner with your partner. And if you want to do that later, we can all connect through email. But maybe a person from another organization is a great place to read it because they don't know your work, and they can give you some say so what. There's Tom. Tom, you have a request for a partner there. So these are just some reminders. So grant proposals are just persuasive essays. Those essays you had to do in high school where you had to write, which ice cream flavor was better than the other, or which character was your favorite in the story. That's what you're doing here. You're really just trying to convince me of something. If I'm in the funder, I'm really just looking at a stack of paper and a bunch of people asking for money, and I have to decide who gets it and who doesn't. So the people that get it are the ones that really sell their story. And it doesn't mean that you can't have a persuasive argument because you're a small program or because you have small numbers. That doesn't matter. It just matters how you sell it and what work you're doing. That's what you're doing. So I have this, I like to use this graphic organizer. If you're if the writing part is a little bit stressful to you, a little bit daunting, it is a really long application when we talk about the SOS application, but a lot of grants are really long and it can be really overwhelming. So definitely some best practices is save all the old drafts so you can think about, you don't have to start from scratch. You can kind of get an idea of what they did last year, especially because I know there's so much turnover in these positions. So someone's just handing you a grant or saying, hey, this is due in March, good luck. That can be really hard. So try to see if you can find old applications. And Tom and Beth, if you'd like to answer in the chat, I don't know if this is true or not, but can they access old applications like from previous years? I mean, I said you can answer in the chat. You can unmute yourself too. Just in case if we have new people and they don't know where their old applications are they able to ask you for that?
Yes, this is Beth. Yes, you may ask for your agency's previous submissions, most definitely.
Thank you, Beth. Mm-hmm. So Beth and Tom in the chat right here, that's Beth and Tom from SOS. They can do that for you. So that's a great place to start. When I took this job, I had to write my SOS grant, and I didn't even know what an SOS grant was. And I looked at old ones and I tried, you kind of get some ideas, you ask for help. That's a great place to start. So nobody's starting with a blank piece of paper, just overwhelmed by that. They should. Yes. Thank you, Tom. So when we know with turnover, everybody should have everything, but maybe we lost it in the shuffle. So it's always good to know that we can get it back from you. So if you like to write with a graphic organizer, do that. Organize your ideas, just like we teach our learners, just like every high school situation you've been in, any writing situation. I like this. I made this worksheet called Narratives and Grants, and it's a hamburger style graphic organizer, and I'll share that with you if that's interesting, or use your own that's not so goofy as a hamburger. But what we're going to do is we really just want, the whole point of this is to show, like we said, what are you proving? What do you want? In the cat hat example, we knew what they wanted. They wanted more funding and said they were limited capacity. They want to expand their reach. In that very short time, you can tell people what you want. How do you know? Why, like, so what? Well, here's some data. Here's some data that I found. And we're going to be including that as like evidence. Like, yes, I think that there, like when we look back at example 1, it says there are a lot of people in my neighborhood that speak languages other than English. Great. How do you know? Like, just because you know, or because there's data that shows it? Yes, thank you, Tom. And there's examples on the website too. So we want to use our data as evidence. So data is not alone. It has to be for something. So if you have some data and you're like, what is this for? Maybe you got to take it out. Maybe that's not for that piece. And then we want to say, what does the data mean? These data show, this means, this suggests. Those are some sentence starters to think about how to talk about the data. Just like when you use a quote, if you're using, like if you think about, I'm going to quote a source, you kind of set it up and then you explain why you use the quote. The same with data. It's a quote. So if we think of it that way, and just like, I'm using the statistic because it's helping my argument. Here's why. What else is important that you should add in there? Like when we talked about, all these people speak a language other than English, and then I say, so what? And then we should say, well, learning English proves this and this and this. That's why it matters that all these people don't speak English yet. And then your conclusion, reiterate, this is why, this is what I want. This is what I want you to do. This is why you should do it. And then that's it. This is why you should do it. Tell me what you should do. And why does this information matter to the grant reviewers? They don't know you. They don't know your great work. They don't know your participants. So you have to tell them what they should care about. And that's what the whole advertising industry is. They're just telling you what to care about in interesting ways. And sometimes we fall for it and sometimes we see through it. But what we want to do is have them fall for it because we're not tricking anyone. You are doing this good work, but we have to play the game of writing it out. So always asking yourself, so what? You can always go a little bit further and share it with a stranger. And that stranger might be a colleague in a different department of your program. They don't know about adult literacy. Maybe they're an accountant, so they can write it. They can read it and figure it out that way. So I know we're kind of running out of time, but I wanted to remind you that we are doing persuasive writing with me on February 22nd. You signed up for this one, so you probably saw it. If you have a colleague that would like to join that one, it's the same link that you signed up for this one with. It's just on our website. If you have any questions about that, you can let me know. That one's free as well. And I would just like you to think as we go out, just the same question from last time. So what do you still need to learn? What are you missing? What was hard for you about that activity? If you're the only one writing the grant, how are you going to get that support that you need in that area? If you have a team, what do you think your role is going to be? If your writing is a little bit iffy for you and you're really good at finding data, maybe that's your role and someone else is going to write it. Think about this as you start to write your applications. This isn't something you do overnight, so you have to plan ahead, and now's a good time to start thinking about it. And ask yourself, as always, who do I share this with? Who do I share this link with when Katie puts up the video online? Who needs to see this? Who else on my team? Because we don't want to silo the information in your brain. We want it so everybody knows how to help. So think about who you want to share this with afterwards. What an honor. Again, it was really fun spending this time with you today, and I'll stick around if anybody has any questions, but I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you so much for your time today, everybody.